There are encounters that seem to defy chance. Two gazes meet, and for an instant, the entire world falls silent. It is as if something deep, from a place beyond time, were pulling those two beings toward an inevitable reunion. It's not about luck or coincidence, but about a silent calling the soul recognizes before the mind can understand. There are subtle, almost imperceptible signs that appear when two souls share a common destiny. Shared dreams, thoughts aligning from a distance, an inexplicable sense of familiarity. These clues, when recognized, reveal that something greater is orchestrating the meeting. Today we will dive into the invisible layers that analytical psychology invites us to explore, unraveling the mystery behind these signs. Leave in the comments, "I trust the calling of my soul." Carl Jung believed that human life is guided by inner forces far beyond the conscious mind. When speaking of destined souls, we enter the territory of the collective unconscious, a deep realm where archetypes, images, and universal patterns shape our experiences. In this symbolic space, meaningful encounters are not mere coincidences, but manifestations of contents that emerge to promote individuation, the process through which we become who we truly are. Among the most powerful concepts is projection. When meeting someone, we often project onto them aspects of ourselves we have yet to recognize, such as qualities we admire or shadows we fear. In the case of a soul encounter, these projections can be intense and catalytic, activating both the luminous and the shadowy sides of our being. This dynamic, though challenging, serves to expand awareness and integrate forgotten parts of ourselves. Another key principle is the integration of inner opposites, the animus and the anima, representing our masculine and feminine dimensions. When a relationship carries a sense of destiny, it often triggers this integration process, provoking profound inner transformations. It is as if the other person were a living mirror, reflecting what we need to embrace and harmonize within ourselves. For Jung, meaningful encounters are opportunities for the unconscious to manifest and guide us toward a fuller state of being. The mysterious signs that appear, coincidences, synchronicities, inexplicable sensations, are the symbolic language of this dialogue between the soul and the world. Recognizing them is a step toward a more conscious life, connected to one's own destiny. In Jung's view, synchronicity is a phenomenon in which two or more events coincide in a meaningful way, without an apparent causal link, yet with deep subjective significance for the one experiencing them. When two souls are destined to meet, these coincidences gain an intensity and frequency that defy ordinary logic. It is not mere luck or chance, but a kind of silent dialogue between the inner and outer worlds, as if the universe itself were conspiring for the meeting to happen. These experiences often begin before physical contact takes place. They may emerge through dreams that anticipate the meeting, through persistent thoughts about a specific person, or through a series of seemingly trivial signs that repeat themselves, hearing the same name in different contexts, crossing paths with symbolic images connected to someone, or receiving a message at the exact moment you think of that person. For Jung, such events carry symbolic value, pointing to the workings of deep forces within the collective unconscious, opening gateways between the visible world and the hidden layers of the psyche. Synchronicity also acts as an emotional catalyst. When a meaningful sign appears, it stirs in the individual a sense of connection that transcends rational understanding, creating an openness to deeper experiences. This openness is essential for the two souls to recognize the bond that unites them. Often, such signs occur during personal transitions, when one or both individuals are going through change or crisis, functioning as guides that point toward the path ahead. In the Jungian context, synchronicity is not merely a curious phenomenon, but a milestone in the individuation process. By paying attention to these events and recognizing their symbolic value, the individual begins to understand that life is infused with a greater meaning. In the case of destined souls, the repetition of significant coincidences creates an energetic field that seems to draw the two toward an inevitable meeting point. This sense of inevitability does not stem from rigid determinism, but from the perception that there is a deep correspondence between their paths, like lines that after many turns finally converge. Recognizing synchronicities requires sensitivity and presence. Often the rational mind tries to dismiss these signs as mere chance, but the subjective experience is so intense it becomes impossible to ignore. For Jung, this is the moment when the unconscious manifests itself unmistakably, offering clues for the inner journey and the encounter with the other. This journey is not only about the relationship itself, but about expanding awareness and integrating internal aspects that without the meeting might have remained hidden. When two destined souls follow the signs of synchronicity, they not only draw closer to each other, but also enter into a flow of experiences that seem guided by a higher intelligence. In this state, events that once appeared disconnected begin to unfold harmoniously, creating a sense of trust in one's path. It is as if the outer world were a living mirror of the inner world, and each coincidence were a reminder that a greater purpose unites the two stories. Thus, synchronicities cease to be mere curious happenings and become true symbolic maps, leading the souls toward a reunion that, in essence, was already inscribed in the depths of their being. In Jungian analytical psychology, the shadow represents the aspects of personality that remain hidden or repressed, often because they do not align with the image we hold of ourselves. It is not necessarily negative. It contains not only painful experiences and traumas, but also creative potential and latent strengths. When two souls are destined to meet, this encounter inevitably awakens the shadow because the other acts as a mirror, reflecting parts of us we avoid facing. The intensity of this reflection can be unsettling. At first, the other's presence may evoke fascination and enchantment, but as the relationship deepens, discomfort, conflict, and intense emotions may arise that seem disproportionate to the circumstances. This happens because the connection stirs deep inner structures, bringing unhealed wounds, insecurities, and unconscious behavioral patterns to the surface. In this sense, meeting the destined person is not only romantic or spiritual, but also profoundly therapeutic, albeit challenging. For Jung, the shadow must be integrated, not rejected. When the relationship serves as a catalyst for this process, it becomes fertile ground for psychological and spiritual growth. A soulmate, in this context, is not only someone who awakens love, but also someone who shows us, sometimes with uncomfortable clarity, what we need to transform. This role is essential for individuation to progress, for without confronting the shadow, full maturity is impossible. The transformative encounter, in revealing the shadow, also allows hidden potentials to emerge. Often within this hidden part of the self lie talents, intuitions, and strengths never fully recognized due to fear or social conditioning. The relationship, by provoking and challenging, creates opportunities for these inner resources to be activated and consciously used. It is as if, by dealing with the tensions and mirrors the other offers, one could peel away layers of conditioning and move closer to a more authentic version of oneself. However, this process is not without risks. The shadow, when projected onto the other, can lead to misunderstandings and disproportionate reactions. Feelings such as jealousy, anger, or rejection may be amplified, not necessarily because the other directly caused them, but because they touch unresolved sensitive points. The key, according to Jung, is to recognize projection and reclaim it, understanding that what disturbs us in the other is often a reflection of something internal. In a destined soul encounter, this awareness is fundamental. The relationship becomes a space for mutual healing and transformation, when both are willing to face their shadows and speak honestly about the vulnerabilities that surface. In this exchange, the bond strengthens not by avoiding conflict, but by facing it with maturity and compassion. This conscious confrontation not only releases energy once trapped in repressing such contents, but also expands empathy and understanding for oneself and for the other. Thus, the shadow's role in a transformative encounter is twofold. It exposes wounds and, at the same time, points to the path of healing. Without this movement, the relationship risks becoming a stage for unconscious repetitions, where old patterns are endlessly replayed. With it, the connection becomes an evolutionary force, capable of leading both toward a more integrated and liberated state. In the context of destined souls, the shadow is not an obstacle to be eliminated, but a gateway that, once crossed, reveals the depth and truth of the connection. It is in this space of honesty and courage that the bond becomes something beyond attraction or affinity. a true path of self-discovery and mutual growth. Carl Jung described the animus and anima as archetypal images of the masculine and feminine that inhabit each person's unconscious. The anima represents the inner feminine in a man, while the animus represents the inner masculine in a woman. Psychologically, these archetypes are not limited to biological gender. They represent qualities, energies, and ways of being that, when balanced, lead to a more harmonious psyche. In significant encounters, especially when two souls share a sense of destiny, the presence of the other acts as a trigger to awaken these inner aspects. It is as if the relationship were a double mirror. While seeing the other, we also perceive parts of ourselves that had been dormant. This awakening can bring enchantment, inspiration, and a sense of wholeness, for contact with the inner opposite archetype brings new dimensions of awareness. The awakening of the animus, for example, can lead a woman to develop greater assertiveness, clarity of thought, courage to take a stand, and the ability to act in the world. The awakening of the anima in a man can bring out sensitivity, intuition, empathy, and openness to the unconscious. These movements do not occur in isolation, but in constant dialogue between the internal and external. Interaction with the partner stimulates these qualities, allowing them to manifest more consciously and integratively. In meaningful relationships, this process tends to be intense because there is a deep resonance between the two. One draws the other into psychic territories that might never have been explored alone. However, this awakening is not always smooth. It can bring challenges, for bringing unknown inner aspects to light requires confronting fears, insecurities, and resistances. Integrating these elements demands awareness and a willingness to open to new ways of perceiving and acting. Jung saw relationships as a privileged space for this development. Through the other, we are confronted with projections of the animus or anima, and gradually we learn to recognize that these qualities do not belong solely to the partner, but are part of ourselves. When this realization occurs, the relationship ceases to be merely a channel for experiencing these energies and becomes a support for each individual to fully embody them. The awakening of the animus and anima also expands one's ability to understand and relate to the world. By integrating the inner opposite, a person becomes more complete, less dependent on finding outside themselves what they feel is missing. This does not diminish the importance of the bond, but makes it freer, less marked by unrealistic expectations. In a destined soul connection, this maturity fosters a relationship that is both intimate and expansive, where each supports the other's growth without suffocating individuality. There is also a subtle yet powerful effect. Integrating these inner archetypes changes the way a person perceives themselves and their place in the world. A sense of alignment and authenticity emerges, as if the inner pieces finally fit together. This state is not merely the result of romantic love, but of the deep work the relationship awakens. The connection becomes not just a meeting between two people, but a meeting with the truest parts of oneself. When two destined souls undergo the awakening of the animus and anima together, they not only deepen their bond, but also become catalysts for each other's transformation. The relationship transcends the personal and touches the archetypal, connecting to universal patterns of integration and harmony. In this sense, every gesture, conversation, or challenge lived together contributes to a larger movement of psychic and spiritual evolution. The process of individuation, in Jung's view, is the journey through which the individual integrates all parts of themselves, conscious and unconscious, to become an authentic whole. It is a path of continuous self-knowledge and transformation, seeking to recognize and harmonize inner opposites, accept the shadow, awaken dormant potentials, and live in alignment with the true center of being. When two souls meet in a deep and meaningful way, this process tends to accelerate, as the relationship becomes a living, constant mirror of the inner parts that need to be recognized and worked on. In such connections, there is an emotional and symbolic intensity that mobilizes latent inner forces. The bond acts as a catalyst, provoking situations and feelings that would rarely arise in a less significant context. One is confronted with their greatest vulnerabilities, but also with their greatest strengths, and is led to look inward with an honesty they might not dare to face alone. This movement accelerates individuation because it forces the integration of psychic contents that would otherwise remain in the shadow for years or decades. Another factor contributing to this acceleration is the constant presence of symbolic stimuli. A deep connection is often filled with synchronicities, significant dreams, recurring symbols, and experiences that seem to carry greater meaning. These elements, according to Jung, are manifestations of the unconscious attempting to engage with consciousness. By interpreting and integrating them, the individual not only understands themselves better, but also broadens their perception of their destiny and purpose. There is also the effect of the exchange of psychic energies. In a deep relationship, each person is touched and transformed by the other's psyche. This interaction creates a rich relational field where unconscious contents from both emerge and blend, offering unique opportunities for growth. It is in this space that one learns not only about oneself, but also about human nature in general. The other ceases to be just a companion and becomes a co-participant in the journey of self-discovery. Confronting unconscious patterns is inevitable in such an encounter. Upon noticing repetitive behaviors, intense emotions, or recurring conflicts, one is invited to investigate their internal origins. Often, it becomes clear that these patterns have deep roots in childhood, past experiences, or familial and cultural inheritances. The deep relationship offers a living laboratory for transforming these patterns, allowing consciousness to expand and new ways of acting and feeling to take root. The acceleration of individuation also occurs because such connections inspire the courage to make concrete life changes. Motivated by the bond and what it awakens, the individual may make significant decisions, changing careers, starting a creative project, leaving situations that no longer align with their truth, or adopting a new lifestyle more in tune with their values. The presence of the other serves both as an anchor and as an impetus for these transformative movements. It is important to note that this acceleration does not mean the absence of pain or difficulty. On the contrary, it often involves personal crises and intense internal confrontations. But according to Jung, it is precisely in these moments that individuation gains strength, as the person is called to reorganize their psyche at a deeper level. The bond, in this context, is not merely a space of comfort, but a field of challenge and mutual growth. When two souls go through this process together, the relationship ceases to be merely a personal bond and becomes an archetypal force, touching universal dimensions of human experience. The growth of one contributes to the growth of the other, and both move toward a more conscious, authentic, and integrated life. It is in this space that individuation, normally slow and gradual, gains speed and depth, driven by the transformative power of the connection. When two souls meet under the mantle of a shared destiny, the bond they form transcends the realm of chance and touches the deepest dimensions of being. Through synchronicities, life whispers that there is a greater purpose. By facing the shadow, the path to healing and expansion opens. In the awakening of the animus and anima, new qualities and perspectives come to life, and in the accelerated advance of individuation, every step taken side by side transforms the very essence. This journey is not made only of moments of fulfillment, but also of challenges requiring courage and surrender. It is in meeting the other that we often find our own center, and it is in the reflection they offer that we discover what we need to integrate to live with more awareness and truth. If this message resonates with you, subscribe to the channel and continue exploring the universe of analytical psychology. Watch the video now appearing on your screen and allow yourself to dive even deeper into this path of self-discovery. Every step we take toward our essence is also a step toward the other, and perhaps toward the destiny that has been waiting for us all along.